Monday mornings with Matt and Kevin. What's in the news? Topics that come up around the dinner table will be given the truth treatment with no punches held and no falsehood left standing. These two will debate real-life issues from a Catholic perspective every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern.
There's so much to talk about, so let's get down to business. Here are Matt and Kevin.
A very good, happy, and holy Monday morning to you all. January 30th, 2023. I can't believe we've been through a month already here, but this is Matt and Kevin, Monday mornings with Matt and Kevin here on the Catholic Family Podcast. We have a lot of great topics to talk about today. We have, of course, our favorite Argentinian apostate who goes by his stage name, Jorge Bergoglio, and some other great topics to throw at you as well. But I hope you've got your cup of coffee if you drink it, like myself, if you've got our show on for the day and are ready to conquer this feast of Saint Martina here on this beautiful Monday morning. So gray skies it's been for a few weeks now. I don't know if I've seen the sun in quite a while, but I hope it's sunny wherever you are. So
it was a nice day.
Yeah, is it? Well, it's been ridiculous here, Kevin. We have this. I'm convinced the sun has disappeared, that there is no more sun, and you can let the flat earthers go at it with this one because it's just gray.
So if you're particularly grumpy today, then we'll know why.
Then we'll know why, right?
Matt's kind of grouchy. Yeah, exactly. Like, get this guy some sun.
Any
get some orange juice.
Comments in the yeah. Do you know who Vin Scully is? By the way, Kevin.
Of course I know who. Vince
of course you know Vince.
I'm a sports guy.
How did he open up his shows? A very good day to you wherever you may be. Right? Isn't that his
sounds right,
signature line? Yeah.
We should
next week we'll use his voice to open up our show. How about that?
Yes, there you go. He's a good Catholic. Really good conservative Catholic. He died. He passed away last year.
He is. You've got competition. I think he has like 7 kids. Or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he's got
very
he's got the
very Catholic guy, but very very, very good at what he did. Boy, the greatest broadcaster of all time, in my opinion. Greatest storyteller, just an incredible, slow-paced storyteller. Beautiful. Anyway, we're going on to a nice topic. Come on, Matt. We're going off onto a nice topic. What are we doing here? We got to talk about
Scully.
The grim, awful stuff because there's been no sun. So you mentioned before the show we wanted to talk about this hideous church in Vienna. Of course, it's always Vienna.
You got to go. Is that the side of the pilgrimage that you're working on?
Unfortunately not.
You have got. So anyone who's listening today, they have got to check this out. It's on Novus Ordo Watch's Twitter feed. The picture, I tweeted it on my, I don't even know my own. I think it's Matthew _. I gotta look. You would think that I would know this. I'm on it all the time. Yeah, Matthew _Theo. I actually had to look to confirm my own Twitter name. It is called, this is in Vienna, Austria, the Vatican II Memorial Church. And it looks, you've got to go check this out. Kevin said you saw it, right? It looks everything and more that you would envision. It's got this hideous white wooden table that's supposed to be the altar in the middle. It's got these pews that are like, I don't even know how to call them that, but it's just like a square seating. Of course, it's the square setup with the table in the middle. And it's I think Mario on his page, Novus Ordo Watch, he said like this will be etched in your memory. And it is. Like I thought of it numerous times already. So make sure you check that out if you want a good laugh. Just the state of what are we remembering? What's the memorial like? What are we recalling here? Like how ugly we can make things, how disgusting we could build something. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, let's start with. I wanted to kind of dive in, Kevin, with Bergoglio's latest. Now, one of the things that he tends to do and does often is he says stuff. He's not as polished, anywhere near as polished as Benedict was. Benedict was a lot more careful when he was speaking, but he does these interviews with people, and he says stuff that is really just off the cuff, not rooted in anything. I think it just comes to him off the fly. And then, he gets the typical pushback from the so-called trads, and then he has to clarify. And he does this time and time and time again. But this time he really dug a hole for himself because his clarification on this actually made the issue worse. So what was going on here was that our favorite apostate here, Bergoglio, said that he's traveling to Sudan, apparently, and he said that while homosexuality is a sin, it's not a crime. And the reason he said that was because in some countries, especially in Africa, if you're found guilty of that, it is a crime. You can face imprisonment for life, for example. There are a lot of, laws against it there. So he was kind of speaking out against that. And, of course, people, oh, can you clarify? Can you explain? Can you kind of, tell us what you actually mean? And his clarification, I believe it was to James Martin, actually, who, requested clarification and immediately got it, as opposed to Burke and friends who are still waiting on their, 7-year now clarification on Amoris Laetitia, I believe it was. But he said in his clarification that, well, homosexuality and all sexual acts outside of marriage is a sin. And he kind of left it at that. And that clarification kind of made it sound like he was saying, well, as long as you're in a marriage, you can do whatever you want, whether it's homosexual or not. And so he kind of dug himself an even deeper hole. And it made me think back on that Abu Dhabi declaration that he did, where he signed the document rather, that professed that God wills all religions, just like how God wills gender, hair color, male and female, all of those sort of things, which implied that it was God's active will. He willingly thought or wills multiple religions. Then he had to clarify it, saying, well, but the problem is these clarifications aren't really clarifications at all. Because if let's say he did misspeak, which I guess possible, okay, he needs to come at that thing with a hammer and say, like, no, this is church teaching. But rather he kind of tries to, very softly and gently kind of maneuver his way out of it. That Abu Dhabi declaration, what he could have done, instead of clarifying it with so-and-so, maybe it was Schneider saying, well, that I kind of meant God's permissive will, or he should have wrote up a declaration condemning the Abu Dhabi declaration. He doesn't ever hit the hammer because he can't, because it's not his beliefs.
Well, and it's exactly what he always does. And someone wrote it, I think, in the book, The Dictator Pope. I forget who wrote it, but a very interesting book that really describes the politics of Bergoglio. And he described him as a Peronist. So Peron was a I believe that's his name, was a dictator back in South America back in the 60s, 70s. And what he would do was he would just bald-faced lie to anybody to please them to their face. And then, he had actually you didn't actually know what he believed. And so what he would do is, if he was in front of the communists, then he'd be a communist. If he was in front of the conservatives, then he'd be a conservative. He'd say everything that they wanted to hear. And this is what Bergoglio does. And Bergoglio, what he'll do is, he'll go on these airplanes and he'll have two gay people there, and he'll be like, oh, I think it's not, who am I to judge? That's his famous line. Who am I to judge?
Yes,
he's the Pope, for goodness sake. But and then what he'll do, so he pleased their whole side, right? And then he'll come back afterwards, and they'll say something like, then he'll say something like, oh, but no, that's, I actually meant this and this and this, which is pretty vague, but giving an answer to the other side. So what he's done is he goes and tries to please both sides, and he's done that brilliantly, and obviously it causes confusion after confusion. But that's more and more what he does. And I think I want to express too that we probably should have started the show with this, that you and I are not priests or moral experts on any of this. We don't want to say exactly what the church teaches. I haven't looked enough into it anyway to say that, on this entire topic. But anybody who watches and pays attention to any of this, if you watch that Bergoglio meets with James Martin, shakes his hand, smiles at him, can you tell me that he is not at least implicitly, accepting what James Martin stands for?
Yeah,
of course he is,
and he does. You articulated it very well. He falls back on the least common denominator. He addresses his message based on who he's speaking to, just to kind of, I guess you can kind of say, dangle like the carrot to say that it's just Catholic enough. Like, if he's addressing a group of Catholics, he has no problem saying things like, well, Christ is the only way to heaven, or turn to Our Lady. He says these things, and like, oh, look, he said these beautiful Catholic truths and all that. But the problem is when he's addressing a group of Muslims, or when he's addressing a group of Jews, which he does numerous times, he'll never say that to them. And that's the problem. And so he'll start talking about fraternity and human compassion and our common home, and he actually has said multiple times the cry of the earth. These are the times where he should really evangelize, and he doesn't. So, and then when you step back and you Google, like, oh, look, Francis said that the only way to heaven is through Christ. He's quoting scripture. No one comes through the Father but through me. Awesome. But he says that when he's speaking to the audience that fits his message. He won't do it to the group of people that need to hear it. And he answers which is okay. He answered James Martin right away. Sure. He's ignored Burke and his friends on these clarifications on other documents. Sure. Okay. The thing is if you want to play Pope, he doesn't have to answer to anyone. He doesn't have to clarify anything to anyone. He is the supreme judge. He is very free to shoo you away, and that's it. He is, if you acknowledge him to be Pope, he can dismiss, ignore, put his hands over his ears over anything that he likes. He doesn't have to get lectured on documents from some random cardinal from Missouri or wherever he might be. So that is a point to make. But he hangs around with these people, and you're right. He constantly has James Martin over. We can't ignore these things. And I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit as well, because it's been a discourse on Twitter. People love to hide behind the mask of that wasn't ex cathedra, right? He didn't say this from his chair. He didn't proclaim this or bind Catholics to this universally. And the point is that it does not matter. They are right. An airplane interview is not a magisterial pronouncement. Okay, fine. But the thing is here, and this is where John Salza, I think, gets it wrong in his book, True or False Pope, you can't ignore what he says. And that's the meat and potatoes, if I can call it that. I always resort, as an Italian, I have to bring up food. That is the meat and potatoes of it here. Is you can't ignore what he is saying, because it's revealing his interior work and his mindset. It's revealing his conscience. It's revealing his religion. And if you look in scripture, and I tweeted about this just the other day, and time again, when Peter spoke, the crowds fell silent. When Peter spoke, debate was over. When Peter spoke, everybody followed. That was it. The judgment was given. No one said, is this ex cathedra? Excuse me, sir, are you speaking from the chair? I didn't hear defined decree and stature in your sentence here. No. The Supreme Pontiff is speaking on faith or morals. You listen whether it's ex cathedra or not. He is the supreme pastor of all Christians. He's teaching on a matter of faith or morals here. I'm not saying it's infallible. It's not, but you can't just brush it off.
Can a pope, let's say he is a true pope, can a pope change previous absolute declared, teachings of the church, including on the death penalty, including on homosexuality? Can that happen? And if it can, then what's the point? Right. It always comes back to that. What's the point of the papacy? What's the point of the church if you can go back and say, okay, this is the law, we've declared this to be the case. Oh, and now we're going to change it. Now I understand with some things that changes, let's say liturgy or other things that can be changed, but eventually it comes to be an absolute joke. I mean, if you really can just change the entire structure of the church and what you actually believe just because, well, you want to, then you're not passing down the same tradition and the same faith that's been passed down for 2,000 years. And that's something we see clearly. And it's something that we see, again, when you look at the church in Vienna, the supposed church, I guess you might call it.
We have to go.
Vienna is just unbelievable. They have their I don't know, archbishop or cardinal. What's his name? Schönbrunn, something like that.
Oh,
terrible. I mean, just they always have just the worst sacrileges in Vienna. And again, when you see that, you see the fruits. That these are the fruits. This is the church that is representing Vatican II, and it does it perfectly because the fruits are disgusting. They're hideous. They're ugly because they're evil. Truth, beauty. That comes from God.
Yeah.
And clearly Vatican II doesn't. And if it doesn't come from God, where does it come from?
Do I have to answer that?
Good question.
You want me to say? And it makes me think too. If you haven't watched, not you, Kevin, but the audience or whatever, if you haven't watched Father Cicada's sermon on the Universal Ordinary Magisterium, it's on YouTube. I think if you just type those words in, it comes up. It is a wonderful explanation, and he brings up some really good points. And he kind of says, no pope, no council has ever defined, say, abortion as being, as an ex-Catholic statement of something that's wrong. But we, as a universal teaching church, we understand abortion to be gravely immoral. No one ever spoke ex-cathedra on it, but that as part of the universal teaching of the church, that you cannot be Catholic and pro-choice, pro-abortion. You can't do these things. And he really articulates it well. So I recommend people, if they're looking for more information on, where does infallibility kind of, lay, if we're not talking about ex-cathedra, but we're not speaking of airplane interviews either, where does it kind of go? And he really ties it in well. So Father Cicada, Universal Ordinary Magisterium, it's on YouTube. Definitely give it a listen on your drive home tonight from work or wherever you might be traveling, going to a Dodgers game. Ha ha.
in February.
Or February. And kind of to switch gears a little bit, Kevin, to your interview, I got to say, with Hunter was excellent. You've got to have him on more. He was very, very good. I loved listening to that. So if anyone hasn't listened to that either, it's on there. He brought up 2 points that I want to kind of touch on really quick that I totally, what would you call it? It
resonated.
Resonated. That's the word. It kind of resonated with me very well because I experienced it. He said, and what I loved is he's talking about all these things, and you brought me up. You were like, "Oh, it sounds very similar to Matt," and I was like, "Oh, yeah."
Did.
I was thinking the same thing as I was listening to it. He mentioned that he was I believe he said he was either at a Novus Ordo or watching it online. I can't remember kind of the point, but he said he wondered if this was how it always was, and it triggered in me a memory that I did that precise thing. I remember being at daily Novus Ordo mass and wondering that, like, did it always look like this? Was it always like this? Was it always in English, or I don't know, Spanish, French, Italian, whatever language it might be? Did it always was this what it always was? And so that was one point that he made up. And 2, the other point that he made up was there's this conversation, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, is I think he said his SSPX priest said, well, when you come back, or when you are back here, when you return to the church. And I've had so many people tell me that, when you come back. But the problem is they don't quite know what coming back even means or entails. They can't quite put a finger on it. And different groups that you ask, they can't quite articulate what you have to do in order to come back, because they don't know. They don't have an answer to what it means to be in the Catholic Church. They continue to throw these, there's no salvation outside the church. There's no salvation outside the church. Sure, that's a dogma from Florence, but they acknowledge the hierarchy in Francis to be the church, but they don't think there's salvation in that. Very, very poor circular theology here.
Well, that's and as you would agree with me, that's the issue with the SSPX. That, I mean, once you get past the things they do right, that the liturgy and a lot of the traditional values that they keep, and you get to their actual doctrine and theology, it's like, wait, what? Like, as you said, we believe there's a hierarchy, but we don't really care. So we think they're the church, but they're not, because, well, we are. That's how they believe. So I mean, really, the proper word for them is Lefebvreist in a lot of ways, because I think in many ways they have set up their own hierarchy. I don't think anybody would, even SSPXers, I don't think you would disagree with me that they have set up their own church where they decide what's right and wrong. Unfortunately, first of all, unfortunately, that's just the wrong path to take anyway. But also, more unfortunately, is that hierarchy that you follow almost doctrinally has tried more and more to go towards Rome, which of course is the wrong direction.
That's and I wonder that, because you have, people say, well, there's no agreement within the Sedevacantists groups or whatever. And true. Okay. I'll give them that. But the SSPX isn't united either. There are people in the SSPX, even forget the resistance in Williamson. There are people in that group who who want to reconcile with Rome. They think their position is a bit difficult. They don't like being considered irregular or whatever they might term they might apply to themselves. They do want to be under the umbrella of Rome, but still in their little, their little corner. And yet there are some who would rather die than reconcile with this conciliar church. And it was an argument between Fillet and Williamson during, their kind of SSPX tour there. So there's disagreements in that scope of Society of St. Pius X anyway. And as you said, they want you to come back to the church, but they're convinced that it's only there. And I have met many SSPXers like that. So I have posed the question, okay, if you want me to return to the church, as if I ever left it, by the way, I'm not suggesting that I have, but if you want me to come back, where do I need to go? And they are absolutely certain that you must go to one of their chapels. You can't go to the Institute of Christ the King, the Fraternity of St. Peter, the Indult, the Novus Ordo, anything. Maybe you can go to the new church in Vienna, but outside of that, that's it. You gotta be here because it's the parallel church. It's all somehow, some way, the church is defected and the truth kind of shifted into there. Someone explained that. I have no idea, but but my overall point here was Hunter I love listening to him. I love when you have people on that share their stories of conversion, because I'm always interested what leads people to this point. And we all have different starting points. I think he was in a mega church. And he even said, he was like, why are all these people, bending one knee before they walk? Things that are weird, that it's very, you gotta get used to. But he was really cool. So Kevin, did you want to talk about McCarthy a little bit and our thoughts on that? I don't know how much you follow U.S. politics anymore.
I followed it a bit. I mean, I want to wrap up the show talking about music, because I had a really interesting experience last week. But we can brush real quickly over McCarthy, because I follow it a little bit, and I just want to get your quick opinion. I know a lot of people kind of get annoyed with politics and stuff, but real quickly, no one had any hope in McCarthy or the Congress. But as far as I've seen, they've actually done pretty well for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah. And I think a reason for that is, there were that group known as the 20 who held out. And the Republicans had such a slim majority in Congress that they couldn't get really any defectors from McCarthy to nominate him. I think he can only have lost 4 or so votes in order to not have enough to be named speaker. And there were those group of people who dissented, who were, we are not voting for McCarthy. And it took 11, 12, however many ballots, first time in over 100 years that it went over one. And they negotiated. And I think that they wanted out of McCarthy. They told McCarthy basically, like, look, we're not going to vote for you unless we can agree on X, Y, and Z. So you kind of have to give and take a little bit here. If you want this speaker role, if this is we're going to hold our ground here. And I think a lot of them did, which I give them credit for, because you don't see that a lot in politics today, especially among the GOP. We will vote for you if you agree to push X, Y, and Z forward. And he, from all that I can tell, he has, one of the roles of the Speaker of the House is to appoint members to certain committees, and he has kind of been, pretty good. I know there's been controversy over Ilhan Omar, him saying that some of her remarks in the past disqualify her from sitting on certain committees, and he's kind of I think he's held his own, because for the most part, from my experience, anyway, from what I've noticed, is that the Democrats are very aggressive. If you remember the way Nancy Pelosi and all of them constantly went after Trump, she was extremely relentless in her assault on him and on his administration. You never get that from Republicans. You would have never have seen, I remember, was it John Boehner, Paul Ryan? They never pushed back on Obama in that way. The Democrats seem a lot more aggressive in their opposition, and they're standing their ground. And I think people were not expecting that out of McCarthy, and so far he has. So I think if you want to say the Republican Party is doing somewhat of a job for the people, I guess you can argue it. He's shown that he's gonna pull up some Hunter Biden information. So things that I think that maybe initially he wanted to stay away from, he has kind of pushed himself into, because he had these agreements with some of these dissenters that put him in office. So we'll see. Interesting times.
And I think it brings us really well to the next topic, because, as they say, politics is downstream from culture. And you see that the Democrats, they really push their agendas because they have no fear. They have no fear of reprisal. They have no fear of anything they can do nothing's going to happen to them. Look at the transgender stuff. Look at all this stuff that happens. They know that no matter how crazy they get, that there will be no comeuppance. And I really saw this culturally the other day. I was doing a basketball tournament as a play-by-play announcer, and it was great. I loved everything about it, except what blew me away was the music. So during the breaks or during the half times or whatever, they'd have music, and it was this hip hop or rap. And it may be because we're in Germany and they allow more explicit lyrics in English. And I mean, these songs are so trash. I couldn't even believe what they were saying. I mean, like just the worst words and stuff you could possibly imagine. Just imagine. Okay, don't imagine. I don't want to put anyone in a cage. But okay,
parental advisory here.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You have all let's say that the 10 worst words ever invented, the 10 worst words in the English language right now, and put them all in a row and then repeat it 10 times. This is this type of music. And what really struck me was how objectifying they are to women. I mean, like shockingly. I mean, like holy mackerel, disgustingly like gross and just absolutely objectifying, sexualizing, truly making them into a piece of meat. And I guarantee you the same people who listens to this music are the same people who are your feminists. They're your feminists. They're the ones who are like, hey, the Republicans don't want to let, a man become a woman. And, but women first. Oh, and here's a song where they're saying, hey, let's go bleep, bleep, and bleep. The bleep, 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 woman, bleep, bleep, bleep. I mean, you can't even make it up, man.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there listening to this the whole time. And it's just like, how can this happen? How has our society let this happen? And it just shows you again, it's because they can. It's because they can.
Yeah, I actually have two things with this. Now that you brought that up, I was just talking about this with somebody. I never listen to the radio in the car. I either have podcasts on, YouTube on. I re-listen to us every now and then, which is always strange to hear myself back. I don't know if you're used to it, but it's weird, but I listen. So the other day I was driving to work, and it takes me about an hour. When I have to go to the office, it takes me about an hour to get there. And I figured, I'm just going to put on some music. So I never do this, but I put it on, and the song that came on, this was a station that is very popular here. Everybody, apparently listens to it, and I could not believe the lyrics being sung in the song. Extremely suggestive. And these are what kids listen to. And I remember thinking, like, I have to turn this off. I can't. How could I in good conscience listen to this? And it brought me back to a memory that I had when I was teaching, because I used to teach 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade over the course of a few years. And we used to do what they called brain breaks. And I bet you could have Incharibo on, and you could talk all about this. I'm sure he's always a wonderful guest of yours. And what we would do is the kids, we would go to this website, and it was a touch board where they could, it was like a smart board. You could touch and interact with it. And the brain break was you pick a song, and you kind of do a just dance. If you remember the Nintendo Wii would have a thing. You'd hear music and you kind of dance along to it. And we would do that throughout the school day. And this was in 3rd grade. And I'm going to be careful what I say, because I don't want to bring up any lyrics or whatever. But I don't know all the songs that the kids love nowadays, but they hit a song. And a few eyebrow raisers as I was listening to the lyrics, but trying to mind my business, whatever. And there was a lyric in it that was suggestive. And there were a few lines in that song. And one of the kids, actually, when the song was over, she came up to me and she asked me what it meant. And very difficult. I don't know if you ever had that experience with your own. I'm sure you don't let your own kids listen to this, but where you're like, it's something you're gonna have to play this maybe for your parents and let them explain to you. What do you do in a situation like that? I don't know, but it's really putting this stuff in the minds of children. And then, as you said, all of a sudden they're so triggered by certain words, like how are you so offended by somebody calling you a name or somebody looking at you the wrong way? When you play these types of songs in your car, you can listen to this, but you can't, if somebody misgenders you or uses your wrong pronouns, you're triggered and you can't handle them. You've got to go hide in a safe space. Like, where's the dissonance here?
You have an entire demographic that no one denies it. No one talks about it, but there's a demographic that goes around and hurts women, kill each other,
All the time.
murder, steal, etc. There's a demographic. We all know about it. And you know what they listen to is this absolute filth. And you know what? I'm going to tell you right now.
And they love it.
It should be absolutely banned. It should be made illegal, and it should be made that if you sell it, if you promote it, if you make it, you go to prison. And this is something that, again, that it's a whole false idea of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech should not exist.
Correct.
Come on,
it's not a
people.
right. It's not a right
No,
at all. It's not a right
of course
at all.
it's not.
Let me ask you this. We hear all this nonsense now, right? But if you go back to the 50s or the 60s, Elvis was a controversial figure for the way he would sway a little bit back and forth, and people were blown away. Like, how is this television? Like, how are people looking at this? What do you think of that back then? What would you say somebody like what we saw with Elvis? Was it too much? Was it opening the doors? What do you think kind of was that
100%? Elvis in rock and roll was sexualized music. That's absolutely true. I mean, rock and roll, look into where does the name rock and roll come from? Now, again, parental, advisory, do it as an adult, but these types of things absolutely came from evil. No question about it. Now, I'm not one who says every rock song is bad. I'm not saying, a beat is bad. Some people do. I'm not there yet. I'm not there to say that it just because it has a beat. I'm close. I mean,
tomorrow.
But I can tell you the foundation of rock and roll, Elvis, the beginnings of it, absolutely no question were immoral. And I can tell you for sure, because a lot of these dances and a lot of these singers were banned and condemned by Catholic bishops in the 1950s.
Right. And do you know how many prominent singers or bands have their success because they've made pacts with the devil?
Yes, they admit it.
Right. They've admitted it. And I believe that the Beatles are actually one of them. I believe I don't know how true it is, but I've heard, reports where, the group, sold their soul to the devil and in exchange for fame. Who else is like that in today's world? I'm sure there's most of them probably. So it really makes you think anything that's really, really big, anything that's really prominent or popular makes you wonder what helped them rise to this immense level.
Katy Perry was a Christian singer as a young girl.
Yes,
she got famous for a song about kissing another girl. Come on,
right.
You're going to tell me that's an innocent rise to fame?
Right.
No chance. No chance.
Right. And Padre Pio, I believe, warned about this too. Or he actually said, I can't remember precisely, but it's something like, the television in your home is a box to letting all this filth in it. It was almost Satan's tool or something like that, he called it. And we see how, really how these prominent names, as you mentioned, Katy Perry or whatever, are thrown into the home. They're thrown into living rooms and family rooms and kids' bedrooms and all of that under that watchful hand of the devil to kind of infiltrate everything. Satan will get in, and what is so innocent and beautiful is music, right?
Well, and I think again, people, and I know for sure, people will say, "Well, Kevin's just an extremist. He doesn't want us to have any fun." And I know it. I've heard people say it, but my point is, and really as a parent, my point is not to condemn it. I have no authority to do that. I'm not telling you what to listen to or what not to listen to. My only advice is never forget what is it we are putting into our heads, and especially what is it we're putting into our kids' heads. Don't just say it's fine, it's just music. All right, don't just say it's Disney, it's fine, it's innocent. Actually look into it. Actually think, when my child watches that movie, when my child listens to that song, what actually is what is actually in their brains during it? And if they're starting to sing it, what are they singing? What are the lyrics they're actually singing? And I know good girls, really good Catholic girls, who will sing songs that I know for a fact are horribly immoral, and they just don't realize it because they're just singing the lyrics. They're not trying to sing something immoral. But then when you stop there and you sit and think, it's like, wait a second, what's this song about? And then you look at that's a really good point. If you ever have a question about it, don't listen to it. Go and read the lyrics.
Yeah.
Your brain will connect in a really different way. And you're going to say, to a lot of these songs, you're going to say, aha, that's bad.
Because they put them to really good rhythm. They put them to good beats, good music, good sound. So as it kind of disguises it. I mean, this would happen to me, and I'm sure I'm not alone, where, you almost knew all the lyrics to a song, but you never really knew what they were saying because you were enveloped kind of in the beat, the rhythm, the sound effects of it, maybe the vocal kind of effects that they put on it, and you could sing word for word, but you never really knew what they were saying. So yeah, until you got it on like hard copy, and you're like, wait, I'm listening to this, I'm saying this, it doesn't register because everything is disguised, right? And it plays with your subconscious. It kind of gets in there, it seeps in, and it formulates your thoughts. It formulates your worldview. It formulates everything, which is why it's very, very hard. And the world is wanting to drown us in all of this. But Christ did say, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. Like, wow, that's hard sometimes, right? It's a hard saying because we're so comfortable. We love listening to music. We love doing these things that are pleasurable. And they can be good and holy and means of good fruit, but they can also be very bad. So as you just said, we want to be prudent. You want to actually look at what you're listening to. I'm sure there are many artists in the world that are very good and have good intentions and have really good, wholesome, clean, just nice lyrics. But be prudent. That's all.
Well, and I can tell you too that if you actually do just listen to church music, it sounds crazy. If you listen to classical, listen to Mozart, listen to Palestrina, and at first it's going to be like your mom telling you you can never eat candy again. You can only eat vegetables. You can only eat vegetables. And I understand. I really do. You think that's disgusting. I'm not going to do it, but just try it because eventually it's like with your body. Your body's going to start eating those vegetables, and it's going to be like, wow, I feel so much better. And I'm telling you, it's the same thing. If you listen to classical music, if you listen to Palestrina, Gregorian chant, for goodness sake. Just try it. Try it for 2 weeks. Turn off all other music. Just listen to church music or classical like Mozart, Vivaldi, and you're going to notice a difference. And you're going to notice that when you go back to the modern music, it's going to feel worse for you. It's going to feel like ugh, like the candy, like the cheap candy that you can tell was manufactured with 90% sugar. It's terrible for you, but you're addicted to it.
People have done that. I haven't done it myself, but because I don't really listen to it too much regular anyway. But people have done it for Lent. Just what you were saying. They're saying, you know what, I'm going to give up pop hits or local radio, whatever, for the time span of Lent, and then by the Easter, they feel exactly what you said. They're like, wow, I actually don't miss it. Like I don't want to hear it anymore. You realize that your brain is like no longer being saturated with this junk, and it made me think of a lot of Novus Ordo. I got to ask Hunter about this. A lot of Novus Ordo songs that are still stuck in my head after all these years. They write these songs so corny, so like, I don't know if you know any, but they maybe they're designed to make you turn to pop music. Like this song "One Bread, One Body" is so bad I have to listen to Britney Spears. Like, I don't know.
Honestly, I mean, it comes back to the idea of what is beauty, and why do we create beautiful things? Why do we crave beauty? Why do we love nature? Why do we love houses that are built symmetrically? Why do we love beautiful churches that are built grand and with proper colors and proper there's a reason for it. It's because God made us that way. God made us to naturally love beauty because God is beauty and God created it. And you know what has happened since Novus Ordo? Actually, it's happened way before that. It happened since the Industrial Revolution really kicked off a lot of this type of stuff where it became about money. It became about speed. It became about the devilish things. Look at Picasso. Back in the 1920s, Pablo Picasso was a beautiful painter. He could paint very realistic, beautiful images, and he did it. You could see him. And then something
I didn't know that.
Flipped. Absolutely. Look up the early works of Picasso and look at the works of him in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And it's the Picasso that and it's hideous. It's from the devil. I'm sorry. I don't care if you like it. It's hideous. And if it's hideous, if it is ugly to your senses that it has been created, then it is not godly. So it's one of the proofs for me against Novus Ordo. Now, just for me, I'm not saying it is a proof, but for me, it's a proof that the Novus Ordo Church has never created something beautiful.
If you look at Mario's Novus Ordo Watch's Facebook page and you click photos and you scroll through them, he's got a lot of. It is funny, I know. He's got a lot of photographs of Novus Ordo altars, of Novus Ordo crucifixes, and all of that, and they're all hideous. Like, you wonder. I tweeted this maybe few weeks ago. The crucifix was like a letter T, and it looks like somebody just took finger paint and just scribbled all over it. And I actually said, like, no, this isn't vandalism. This is what it looks like. But who in the right mind, like, who actually says, like, this is beautiful, let's put this up? What is going on in your head?
But that's
that
my
actually
point,
says this needs to go right there.
That's my point.
You know?
It's because this religion doesn't come from God. They cannot do beautiful things. I really believe that they cannot create goodness. That they have to have the hideous. Look at the hall, the chamber of Paul VI.
Paul VI, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
That's Saint Paul VI. Excuse me.
Yeah. So my apologies.
Sorry.
it's something like out of a nightmare. That's not just. I'm not just saying that as a state of a contest, guys. Go look it up. Look at the inside and the outside of Paul VI's chamber. It is something from hell. It is something from a nightmare. It is something from the Novus Ordo.
And what you never see is the door, right? You're always looking at the front of it, which kind of looks like all these snakes and all these little snails and eels or whatever they are, kind of coming out of like this block. I don't know what you would call it, but if you turn it around and you look at the exit where you can walk out, it's two like snake eyes. It kind of shapes itself and forms into two almost look like scales, and then these two little diamonds or whatever almost form the eyes, and it's just disgusting. And again, like you said, they decided, let's build this and let's let this be a visual representation, a manifestation of our faith. I think it manifests the Novus Ordo religion very, 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 very well.
It does, no question about it. Well, Matt, I've appreciated it. We've kind of already run a bit long, but that was fun. That was a good conversation. I hope people enjoyed that. I hope people always check in. We'll try to be back next Monday. And that's something, if anyone during the week has something you want us to talk about, we would love it if you just hit us up with your ideas. Yeah, comment on this video, send me an email, kevin89davis@gmail.com, and say, hey, guys, we've been talking about this. What do you think about this? I mean, because we want to talk about what you want to hear. We do just like having conversations and hearing ourselves speak, but otherwise we actually do like entertaining our audience. So if you have something you want us to talk about, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but we like having ideas, things that are typically, we like things that are topical, but it doesn't have to be. You want to get our opinions on a certain movie or something like that, totally, let us know, and we'll do the best that we can, and always try our best to entertain, but also do our best to have a Catholic perspective. Does not mean we represent the Catholic Church. We could be wrong about everything we just said because we're two dumb guys, but we're two Catholic dumb guys. So we at least try to have a moral perspective. So Matt, until next week, I really appreciate it. Thanks as always for being part of this show. And I'll see you next week.
Make the world Catholic again.